What if I told you everything you think you know about the French Revolution is a lie? The storming of the Bastille, the fall of the monarchy, and the rise of liberty, those iconic moments are only part of the story. But what about the bloodshed, the betrayals, and the shocking truths hidden beneath the surface? Today, we're uncovering the dark, untold facts about the French Revolution, facts that history books often leave out. Stick around because this is a side of the revolution you've never seen before. The French Revolution. It's one of the most significant events in history, a moment that reshaped the world and set the stage for modern democracy. But while we often hear about the grand ideals of liberty, fraternity, and equality, there are hidden truths about the revolution that will shock you. What if I told you that the revolution wasn't just about freedom? What if I told you that some of the people who fought for liberty were just as brutal as the monarchs they overthrew? What if the French Revolution wasn't the triumph of the people, but the start of an even darker chapter in history? Today, we're peeling back the layers of the French Revolution to reveal the secrets history books often skip. From power struggles to betrayals and shocking alliances, let's dive into the hidden facts you won't find in your average history class. We all know the basic narrative. The French people, oppressed by an extravagant monarchy, rise up and overthrow the king, seeking liberty, equality, and justice. But there's a crucial detail many history books leave out: the revolution wasn't just about freedom. It was also about power, who would control it and how far they would go to keep it. The revolution was messy and complex. It wasn't just about the peasants rising against the aristocrats. Yes, the monarchy was overthrown, but the real power struggles took place among the revolutionaries themselves. The Jacobins, the Girondins, and other factions each had their own ideas about how France should be governed. The result? Violent clashes, political betrayals, and the execution of former allies. What the history books don't often tell you is that, while the revolution was about freedom, it was also about the fight for control, and sometimes, the cost of that control was far darker than we're taught. You've probably heard about the Reign of Terror, those gruesome months when thousands of people, including King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, were executed by guillotine. But the truth behind the terror is far more chilling than most realize. It wasn't just a temporary lapse into chaos, it was a deliberate and systematic purge by the revolutionaries themselves. Maximilien Robespierre and the radical Jacobins believed that the only way to protect the revolution was through terror. But the real shocker? It wasn't just the monarchy's supporters who were targeted. Anyone who was seen as a threat to the revolution, whether they were once a revolutionary themselves or simply didn't agree with Robespierre's vision, was sent to the guillotine. People who had once fought for freedom found themselves branded as counter-revolutionaries and executed. The Reign of Terror wasn't just about punishing the guilty, it was about purging anyone who threatened the revolution's vision. And what started as a fight for liberty quickly became a brutal political massacre. We often think of the revolution as a male-dominated movement, but in truth, women played a crucial role in its events, roles that have been largely overlooked. The most famous example is the Women's March on Versailles in 1789. Hungry, angry women marched 13 miles from Paris to Versailles to demand bread and bring the royal family back to Paris. This march marked a turning point in the revolution and was instrumental in the king's eventual downfall. But women didn't just play the role of protesters, they were active in shaping the revolution. Women like Olympe de Gouges fought for gender equality and women's rights. Unfortunately, as the revolution became more radical, their contributions were pushed aside. Olympe de Gouges herself was eventually executed during the Reign of Terror for her political beliefs. While the revolution was supposed to bring liberty and equality for all, women found themselves sidelined, their roles erased from the story. The revolution's promises didn't extend to gender equality, and history forgot the vital contributions of women who fought for a better France. We've been taught that the French Revolution was driven by the oppressed masses, the starving peasants, and the working-class citizens. While it's true that the revolution had its roots in poverty and inequality, many of the key revolutionaries weren't poor at all. They were part of the bourgeoisie, the educated middle class. Figures like Maximilien Robespierre and Georges Danton came from wealthy backgrounds and used the discontent of the people to further their own political agendas. They weren't peasants rising up against the aristocracy. They were educated, middle-class elites seeking to seize power for themselves. In fact, some of the revolution's most notorious figures, such as Napoleon Bonaparte, emerged from this class. Napoleon, who would eventually crown himself emperor, owed his rise to the chaos created by the revolution. So, while it's true the poor played a role, it's also important to remember that the revolution was as much about class struggles among the elites as it was about the masses. We all know about the execution of King Louis XVI in 1793, but few understand the political consequences of his death. While many saw it as a necessary act to eliminate the monarchy, the truth is that his execution triggered a political divide that would haunt the revolution for years to come. The decision to kill the king wasn't unanimous. It split the revolutionaries themselves. Some argued it was the only way to ensure the revolution's survival, while others feared it would push France into further chaos. And, as we all know, the violence didn't end with Louis's execution. In fact, his death marked the beginning of a new phase of the revolution, one that was defined by even more bloodshed, instability, and eventual tyranny under figures like Robespierre and Napoleon. Here's the most shocking truth. The French Revolution, with all its promises of liberty and democracy, ultimately paved the way for a dictator. Napoleon Bonaparte, who was once a general during the revolution, rose to power in the wake of its chaos. He didn't abolish the monarchy just to create a democratic republic. Instead, Napoleon crowned himself emperor, undoing many of the revolution's gains. The revolution's collapse into violence and instability allowed Napoleon to present himself as the solution. The chaos created by the revolution set the stage for an emperor to rise to power, and with Napoleon's reign, many of the freedoms fought for were sacrificed in the name of order. The French Revolution wasn't just a story of freedom and triumph. It was a tale of power struggles, betrayals, and unforeseen consequences. What started as a fight for liberty spiraled into a brutal, chaotic period that ultimately gave way to new forms of tyranny. From the Reign of Terror to the rise of Napoleon, the revolution left behind a legacy of bloodshed, broken promises, and unanswered questions. So, was the French Revolution truly a victory for the people? Or was it a catalyst for something far darker? What do you think? Do you agree with the way it played out, or do you see it differently? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, and let's get a conversation started. If this video gave you a new perspective on one of history's most iconic revolutions, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe for more deep dives into history's untold truths. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay curious.